Hello and welcome to another video. If you were here for my last video on programming, I kind of talked about my journey and where I came from, my background, and now I'm going to talk about the next steps that you should take if you have finished learning the basics. And by basics, I mean object-oriented programming as a principle, data structures and algorithms, data structures being primitive as well as complex data structures that you create, objects, classes, conditionals, loops. Once you have learned all of those things, the next thing that you might be stuck asking yourself is, how do I apply that? How do I then build full scale applications that will do a certain thing? And I'm here to answer that question once again with a free resource, which I will not only leave a link down below, but also show you the resource that I have sitting on my desk right here. Happy Black History Month. If you didn't know, it's also February Black History Month. And if you're interested in learning more about Black history, from the legacies of influential Black people to the unwritten legacies of Black people in general, I'm going to leave a link so you could also learn more if you are interested. Okay, let's get back into it. So again, you've finished the basics, data structures, algorithms, you've done some OOP, object-oriented programming, and now you're asking yourself, how do I take my coding to the next step? What am I missing? And for me, this was the hardest question to answer. I was doing LeetCode, I was building small applications. I felt good, but it just didn't feel polished. It didn't feel like I was building anything significant. And I was always asking myself, like, how do I build a Facebook? How do I build a Google? Like, I don't think this small little for loop application that prints out various different strings is going to cut it for me. What am I missing? And it's very, very hard to answer that question for yourself, especially when you're a self-taught developer. Now that I've been working at my company for 2 years, and I've also had a lot of mentors and I've also read a lot of books, I found one book in particular that made me realize that even when I was about 2 years into my career, I still didn't have the basics in an applicable way to creating large scale enterprise software. It wasn't until I found the standard. This book changed my coding paradigm in multiple ways. It's free. You can find it on GitHub. It's open source. And if you want a hard copy, you can also buy it on Amazon. The standard is so impactful for how I write software. It simplifies architecture, and it combines what you already know with a standard of doing it so that you can consistently rely on the techniques and skills that you're building instead of having to recreate things from scratch all the time. I'm going to go ahead and list my 3 reasons why the standard should be the next book you read after you have finished the basics of object-oriented programming and data structures and algorithms. The standard talks about the most important thing, which is connecting with people. I know, that's weird. It's like, why is that the most important thing first in a book of programming? Why not we just get right into the code? The standard goes further than just talking about code, and it tries to talk about the importance behind the code and the impact of the code. Software has revolutionized the world. It has changed the lives of many. With the internet connection as it is today, we can literally call people across the globe. That does so much profound. It's so profound in terms of the level of access that people have towards this and the amount of information that gets traded on a daily. The importance of that is that you are literally impacting people's lives. I make software that impacts thousands, if not millions, of people's lives. That's crazy. And it all starts with technology. So the people at the end of the day must be the core of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And hopefully it's for the positive. And I like that because the standard just throws that bit at the first part so that like, yes, we're writing code. Yes, you're making software, but we're also having an impact on people's lives. We're connecting people to resources. We're connecting people to healing, right? Online therapy has become a big, big industry, and that's all because of technology. So, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is all about impact, and hopefully we can drive that impact towards the positive of all of mankind. The second thing the standard talks about is test driven design. It's one thing that I feel like so many engineers, especially when you're in the company, when you're in, corporate, we just move so fast that we don't always test our code. And it talks about that as the first thing that you must do before you write code. I remember when I first started writing code, I had a lot of trouble with knowing where issues were and why they were happening, and it just became very confusing. And I noticed there was a trend. Even the code that I got and was inheriting from other developers was not always the best tested. The standard stresses how important it is to write code by testing it first and then coding. And it's a very strange principle when you actually apply it. A lot of people learn this in school or boot camps through the theory aspect of it, but they don't actually apply it in day-to-day code. When you apply it in day-to-day code, your coding quality, it goes up a lot. And the level of extensibility is also going to go up a lot because you start to realize, man, I can't test this function. I have to pass in several different things and it's not going to work. Or even when you do test the function, right? Maybe it needs to be broken up because there are so much parts of it that might go wrong and you don't know which part might go wrong. And so you need to break up your function into multiple smaller pieces. Literally today I had that same epiphany and I literally had to refactor an entire class because of that. And I'm okay with that. I'm still learning. The third thing, and this is again a very broad concept, but it stresses quality. And the way that it stresses quality is by breaking the things down into simple, understandable bits. Let me explain. When you write enterprise level software that has a front, maybe a middle, and a back end, those concepts are all widely different. And there are so many different ways to do front end work, middleware, and back end work. None of it has to be consistent, but the standard stresses that consistency. That is what makes this book different than others. It's not just theory, it's theory with an application around a certain standard of creating software. It's skills that you can always go back to and rely on when creating enterprise level software, and they will stand the test of time. Of course, software will continue to develop and change, but your ability to apply a certain set of principles to your code will stay the same. So again, if you are ready for that next step, that next book, I highly recommend The Standard. This one is just a video of me talking about the impact of the standard on my career as well as the importance of it. Once you have done object-oriented programming, once if you have done data structures and algorithms, look at the standard. Again, it is free on GitHub. It is open source. If you want to pick up a hard copy, you can do it on Amazon. But this book in particular will take you to that next step of programming, and especially for all my self-taught developers out there, you need to read this book. It will allow for you to compete on the level of your peers, as your peers in the industry, if not better. And that book alone is what's going to get you there to that next step. It does require consistency and it does require practice, but the theories of that book and the principles of that book will take you far. With that, I'm going to sign out. Again, happy coding. And to my Black and Brown developers, you can do it. I know sometimes it gets hard, it gets tough, you doubt yourself, you don't see a lot of people like you, but I just want to say, as a self-taught developer myself, I struggled a lot with feeling like I was empowered to do what I was doing, and some of those thoughts came from myself, but I want to let you know that you have what it takes to be here. Just keep pushing forward one day at a time. I also write articles on Medium. I actually just wrote a good one about the imposter syndrome and how I deal with it, so if you struggle with that, you can take a look. I'll leave that link down below. And this is Yusuf signing out.